Howdy everyone, welcome back to the Disc Barn. I hope you're excited because today we are talking about an album that has been majorly slept on this year. In July of 2022, a band called Chiefstate released a contender for my favorite album of the year called Waiting for Your Colors. This is an album with a theme that's never going to go away. Finding your place in the world in your 20s, when you're just getting started with your real life, is going to be a challenge for most people. But a lot of these classic pop punk albums like The Upsides or Copacetic or Life's Not Out to Get You, they've come from bands who were going through that in the early 2010s. Although Waiting for Your Colors tackles the same themes as those classic pop punk 2010s albums, it does have a slightly more modern take, but it is still emotional and heartfelt and genuine, and they've crafted something really special here. And it's nice to have an album that has a modern take on this theme and have it be so great. Usually you've got to go way back in a band's discography because a lot of these bands have matured and aren't going through this, like the Wonder Years, for example, aren't going to sing about this anymore. People who were in their 20s in 2011 are now in their 30s, and people who are currently in their 20s have a much different set of challenges and emotions to go through than the previous wave of 20-somethings did. And even though it's not 2012 anymore, frontman Fraser Simpson does call back to that exact year on the opening track, Continental Drift, literally saying that it was a simpler time back then. Indeed it was. Themes of growing up and finding your place in the world are literally never going to go out of style, but Chiefstate proves adept at capturing those feelings while also creating memorable and catchy songs in the process. The first two tracks are sure to get you hooked on this album because they're bangers, plain and simple. Those two songs have some of the bizarre lyrics and songwriting that really reminds me of Copacetic and Shapeshifter era Knuckle Puck, especially in the chorus, feeling the continental drift. I don't know. But it still manages to feel sincere. The album's not really treading any new ground lyrically. There's talk of, what do I do with my life? I'm running from something. How do I handle these situations? But the songs are so fun and Fraser's performance is so good that it gets me to buy into yet another I don't know what to do with my life pop punk album. There are some missteps, some weaker tracks in this album. Out For Me, Losing Sleep, and Burning Out are those songs, in my opinion. These are tracks that just needed a tiny boost of creativity to stand out a little more. But I do want to be clear that these three songs are still a cut above a lot of the pop punk that we hear these days. The secondary vocalist gets his first chance to shine on Out For Me, but I think he does a much better job at showing what he's capable of and his chemistry with the band in Wasting Away. Drown is very similar to Out For Me, but it has that boost of creativity that I wanted Out For Me to have. This song is just a much better take on a very similar rhythm and feeling. That's mainly because of the killer chorus and some great drumming. And that back-to-back 1-2 punch of Wasting Away and Drown make the middle of this album feel like it's a swell instead of a slog. Those two tracks do make up for the back-to-back weak songs of Burning Out and Losing Sleep. Again, those aren't bad tracks, they're just not as great as the others in this album. There's two really effective slow tracks in here, one about death and one about losing someone you love. Again, things that we've heard before, but they are a modern and competent take on these two themes. And one of the main reasons they sound fresh is they're not just an acoustic track. It would have been all too easy to make those stripped down acoustic ballads, but they don't. It's still a full band track and it's gonna be fun to hear live. I hope I get to hear it live soon. It's definitely weird that those two tracks are back to back. The two slowest songs are track 8 and 9 on this album. I thought that was very odd, but it does really bring you down a little bit and sets you up for the standout track of this album, Sakura. Sakura is an amazing closer. I have to think that they knew that this was the best track on the album and that's why they closed this album out with it. But lyrically, it also makes sense as a closer. It starts out with my favorite chord progression on this album and a drum beat that just leads right into Fraser singing in the best octave for his voice, in my opinion. It's not too high that he has to really reach for it, and it doesn't become grating either. The chorus just explodes into the highest note that he sings, and I think he's really giving it his all on this track. And the delivery of the word colors on this song is so juicy, I love it. This is definitely one of the best pure pop punk records of the year, in my opinion, perhaps even in recent memory. I had a ton of fun with this album. I listen to it constantly. I have it on CD, and I know that Chiefstate has said that they're trying to make a profit and go into the green, which has been really hard, and that's sad. It makes me sad that the music I love is such a huge financial burden on the artists. If this was released in 2012, I think it would have been a huge hit. But for now, I think it's just an underrated gem. I think not enough people are talking about it. This album feels like one of the best pure pop punk releases I've heard in a long time. It wears its heart on its sleeve. It's emotional. Guys, I hope that if you haven't heard of Chief State and haven't listened to this album, that I've convinced you enough that you'll go and check this album out. If you like this video at all, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. Thank you so much for doing that. Anything pop punk or pop punk related, I'm going to talk about it, and I hope you'll join me in those videos. Until then, I will see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.